We're about to tell you one of the most important stories about our government that you'll ever hear. It is a story of how our government has a shadow budget that is totally unaccountable to the people, is set up to help the richest people in the world, and plays with trillions of dollars of our money. Now that sounds unbelievable, but it actually is totally true. Now, speaking of unbelievable, it has already given $220 million in bailout money to the completely unqualified wives of Wall Street bankers. And if they lose the money, well, you have to eat their losses. But if they make a profit, they get to keep all of it. And if you think that's bad, Muammar Gaddafi even gets to play this game on our dime. So what is this shadow system? Well, it's called the Federal Reserve. And what they're doing with your money is absolutely outrageous. And we have the man who broke this story with us now to tell us more about it. Matt Taibbi is a contributing editor for Rolling Stone. His latest article is called The Real Housewives of Wall Street. Matt, great to have you here.
Great to be here, Jank.
All right, Matt, first let's start with this different form of a bailout that people might not be familiar with. What is the Fed doing in this version of the bailout?
Well, originally the bailouts were used to target and rescue specific institutions like Bear Stearns and Fannie and Freddie and AIG, and then from there, there was the broader bailout effort in the fall of 2008, the TARP, that was really about rescuing insolvent banks and cleaning up genuinely toxic mortgage-backed securities and getting those out of the system. But once Wall Street saw all that public money coming their way, they basically started saying to the Fed and to the government, hey, we'd sure like a government guarantee to invest in student loans and credit cards and aircraft loans and commercial mortgages and pretty much anything else you can think of. And that's when this whole other galaxy of bailout programs started to come down the pipe, and they all have names that people never heard of, like the TALF and the TAF and the PPIP. And essentially all these programs, and they're cumulatively about many trillions of dollars, they extended government guarantees and gave away more or less free money to hedge funds and other Wall Street characters to invest in all these different varieties of securities. And they got to keep the winnings, and then we had to eat the losses.
Matt, the thing that outrages me is that, like before in the past, they had to go to the Treasury and get money from the United States Congress, right? It had to be approved, and eventually there were consequences for those votes, right? Now this seems like an end run around the Treasury and around Congress. Can the Fed just do that? Can they just print trillions of dollars and give it to whoever they like?
Well, that's a complicated question. The Fed's, doesn't have an infinite balance sheet. It does have, a cap on how much money it can spend. Although in a couple of instances in the last couple of years, it has had a couple of programs called quantitative easing, where they've literally printed new money and just started spending it. But that's not what happened here. But you're right, it is an end run around Congress. Most people think of the bailouts as TARP, which was an $800 billion program that used Treasury money, in other words, taxpayer money, and that was very tightly controlled, and when they gave out that money, it came with very stringent controls. In other words, you had to reduce the amount of compensation you gave to your executives if you took this money. But these other Fed programs are completely unaccountable. They, until very recently, were shrouded in complete mystery and were completely unaccountable to any elected officials.
So if they're unaccountable, of course, you eventually get abuse. And it seems like the tale of these Wall Street wives is an excellent example of that. Tell us about their story.
Well, what's the backstory of this is, all of these transactions were secret up until very recently, when there was a bipartisan coalition of people in Congress that included Ron Paul and Alan Grayson and Bernie Sanders, and they attempted to open up the Fed's books. And while they didn't succeed in getting the entire history of the Fed's books open, they did get this 2-year period from the end of 2007 to 2009 when they got to look at all these bailout transactions. And among these 21,000 bailout transactions were a number of crazy names, and just for the sake of trying to sell this story to my editors and to try to attract readers to this issue, we picked out the craziest name in the list, and that was Christy Mack and Susan Karchis. And Christy Mack is the wife of John Mack, who at the time was the CEO of Morgan Stanley. And as far as we can tell, their only qualification for getting a $220 million loan from the Fed in order to buy student loans and commercial mortgages was that they were married to Wall Street executives.
So they don't have any previous experience, but it doesn't matter because they can't lose. Tell us about these non-recourse loans, because that's another part of this outrage. That, you know what, if they lose, we have to put up the money. I can't believe that. How does that work?
Well, the way this works is that basically the Fed says, here's a whole bunch of money. Go out and, go with God and buy a whole bunch of securities or whatever it is you can find. Mortgages, student loans, credit card loans, whatever it is. You go buy the securities, you give them to us. If they go up in value, you take them back. If they go down in value, we keep it and we eat the losses. That's basically the way a non-recourse loan works. Now, they had to pay a small premium of less than 10% on the valuation of these securities, so they did have a little bit of skin in the game. They stood to lose a little bit, but basically, if the stuff went up in value, they kept everything, and if it went down in value, the losses were basically almost all ours.
All right, and finally, Matt, how's Gaddafi involved in all this?
Aside from all the hedge fund millionaires and billionaires that are on this list, there are a number of really crazy names. There's the Bank of Bavaria, the Development Bank of South Korea, Volkswagen, Toyota, Mitsubishi, but there's also a company called the Arab Banking Corporation of Bahrain, which is a 63% owned entity of the Central Bank of Libya, which somehow got a $35 billion line of credit from the Federal Reserve through emergency lending programs, and nobody can figure out yet exactly what the rationale behind that was, but it's definitely on this list of transactions.
Stop giving away our money, man. This is crazy. All right, Matt, incredible reporting. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.